Well, hello everybody. How is everybody doing? Let me see, are we live streaming on YouTube? Here we are. We're here. Okay. Welcome. Alright, how many people do we have here on the stream? We're all here. Alright, we already one stream, so we need to add. How can we add?
Just putting a few finishing touches on the new tattoo I'm working on. So hard to get out these days.
We're going to add.
Okay, so I'm glad that went well, Ian. Curtis liked it too. Joshua, did you like it? Oh, severed.
Yeah, I saw that. She cut off her own hand to cause.
Yes,
It's getting scarier now.
it is.
Judge Stephanie Boswell, her hobby is practicing surgery without a license. Honestly, I asked her to check on a suspicious record, and this happened. Bakers, you are going to emulate Stephanie by making your own severed limb case.
Welcome everybody.
Your own severed limb case. Oh God.
Own severed limb case.
Wow.
How's that?
That's really fun.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, it might be easier than the last one.
Yeah, I think it would be.
The more lifelike it is, the better your
I
shot.
guess that means you're gonna do the limbo now.
Oh.
And then you have added. And you added.
Oh wait, they're doing everything differently.
We're doing a freebie.
Yeah. Alright. Here we are. Let me go get some people. I think people are logging off.
Face each other in a head-to-head 7-down challenge.
Oh, so the top two move on, the bottom two
Go
have.
out. Okay.
No. The bottom two do a sudden
Yeah,
death face
Oh
to face.
no. Okay.
Doing a live session.
Alright, Bakers, you have 2.5 hours
Let's
to
stumble around. I don't even know if you recognize me.
Alright.
Well, he's not really.
Let's get
he's
into
already
this
going
tonight.
very
So
intelligent.
tonight's stream tonight. This is my update number 4 for the day of October 10th, 2022.
Time doesn't
And
really mean anything.
so here we're going to talk about the Thanksgiving today. We're also going to talk about the updates in the labor front right
That's
now.
pretty much
So
it.
here we go. So
Well,
let's get started. So let's get started.
oh God, she had like.
So QP
maggots
over the last
going
week
out.
filed a no board report, meaning we could now be in a lethal strike position as of
But since she
October
already
24th.
wins these kinds of things, she
So-
might actually win here.
Let's open slides.
She's got a huge
And,
leg up, no pun intended.
Yes.
let me open up share screen.
Oh yeah, no, she's in her element right now.
Yeah, she is. Oh yeah, she's.
Yeah, she's in her element. Oh, there's the maggots.
The union representing 55,000 of the province's education workers is officially requesting a no board report as bargaining continues with the province. So for the latest, we're joined live by Siobhan Morris, Queen's Park reporter for CTV News Toronto. Siobhan, let's explain to our viewers what a no board report means when it comes to the potential for strike action.
This is really a mechanism, Christina, that signals that the union doesn't think that a deal can be reached at this point. So this starts us down the path closer to getting to a strike. Doesn't mean we are in strike mode yet, and there's still lots of room for a deal to be reached. This does, however, start a 17-day countdown clock from today once this thing is granted. And then if there's going to be any strike action, whether that be a full-on walkout, a withdrawal of service, or any kind of work to rule legislation or work to rule action, pardon me, the union would have to give people 5 days notice. So we're looking at if there's going to be any kind of strike action in a period more like the end of October before we see any of those changes. Of course, like I said, lots of time to reach a deal, but also time for the government to intervene if they want to stop this too.
Yeah, so Education Minister Stephen Lecce saying today in a statement, for our part, we will remain at the negotiating table ready to reach a fair deal. It's quite clear the union does not see this to be a fair deal. Do you anticipate that the two sides will reach any kind of agreement? I mean, at this point, frankly, it seems unlikely.
It's hard to picture a deal coming the way that both sides have been talking in the last few days. Both sides really dug into their respective positions. The government talking about the union being intent on striking, the union saying that the government has no intention of proposing any kind of real deal that their members can ratify and accept. Now, that said, I will say we were in a similar position in 2019, where the government had not offered a deal that the union felt it could accept either. The day before the strike was about to start by CUPE members, they reached a deal. So it's not completely impossible, but at this point in the game, the way the language is from both sides, it is hard to conceive of that happening in the near term anyway.
Yeah, you're right. It's something nobody wants, but we did see it come very close last time and then a deal was reached. Okay, thanks for that insight. CTV News' Queen's Park reporter Siobhan Morris. We appreciate it.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Siobhan. Thank you.
CUPE is holding a news conference to update the status of bargaining between the province and education workers. President Lauren Walton is speaking now. Let's listen in live.
Make a single move. We're still here until the end of today. We want to negotiate. We want to reach a negotiated deal, but we're not going to bargain with ourselves. Frontline education workers have real expectations. They have expectations of us as their bargaining committee. They also have expectations of the Ford government and the school boards in which they work. Education workers expect that the Council of Trustees Association and the Ford government to come to the table with something respectful that workers could accept. No more pay cuts, not continued poor working conditions, and definitely not a failure of a real guarantee for the services that our students and schools desperately need. If we do not have any real negotiations happening by the end of the day, we will be requesting a no board report. I will now open for questions.
Hi, Laura. It's Colin from Global. So what specifically now are you looking for in order to avoid filing the no board report? Is it a matter of compensation? And can you be specific in terms of exactly what the government has offered maybe over the last 2 days, or if they've shown any sign of movement?
They have offered us nothing. As a matter of fact, today they came back and asked us to start taking away from our proposals without showing anything. And we said, listen, we've been bargaining with ourselves for the last month. It is time for them to move. You can't come back to us saying that 1.25 and 2% are reasonable. It will not be ratified. It's time for them to come to a real deal. And by, if we need to request a no board report in order to apply that pressure, if that's what the pressure that they need in order to come to the table, then that's what's going to happen. Kristen?
Hi, yes, thanks for taking my question. I'm just wondering why you're coming out now to announce this. Why not wait to the end of the day and see how things go? Why are you doing this now?
We're hoping that, we can talk about it now. We have flagged for them that this is what was going to be happening. We're hoping that, maybe by saying, hey, listen, this is going to happen in the public, that we can get some pressure. There has been clearly a disconnect between what people are seeing in the media and what is happening at these tables. You can't say that you want a real negotiated deal, but not come to the board table with a real deal or even a real proposal. It's just been status quo, and nothing that has been offered by this government or by the school boards is going to help students, is going to help parents or help workers. It's time.
So you can say that about the province though, but you also said yesterday that you're not going to budge on your salary demand. So are you guys ready to negotiate at the table as well? I mean, first offers are rarely make the contract.
Absolutely. We have come back to them with several different pieces that we were ready to make a move on based on them also making a move. They have refused to make a move. You can't keep asking education workers to take less while you want to demand even less. And I think that's, this is a real problem. We can't keep saying take away from the people who are already at the poverty line. Today, I had one member talk to me about how they are going to the food bank to ensure their family has a Thanksgiving meal. And yet the minister and Doug Ford, both of whom will have very good Thanksgiving meals, are asking this member to accept 33 cents. I think it's time for the minister and the premier to think about how they would feel as somebody who is making $39,000 a year if they are willing to accept the peanuts that they're passing at the table. Allison?
Hi, if you do get to the point at the end of the day of the no board report and then it gets issued, have you thought 17 or so days ahead to what that might look like? Are you planning for sort of a full withdrawal of services right away? Are you looking more at incremental work to rule type actions?
So we are only going to be requesting the no board. It will need to be filed. There's a countdown period that happens. And we will be talking to members about where they are ready. But a lot of that's going to be based on what we see happen between now and then. There are still 2 bargaining dates. It would be a really great idea to see more bargaining dates come forward. Really, the government and the school boards have the power to avoid all the striking, any sort of job action whatsoever. It's up to them to come to the table with a real deal that is respectful. We cannot continue disrespecting education workers in the way that this government and the school boards are.
And to the point of the 2 more bargaining dates, I guess similar to Chris's question, then why not wait until the end of those 2 dates to see if you need to file a no board or not?
Well, because right now we're just bargaining with ourselves, Allison. And so while those 2 dates are there, it is clear that there needs to be a little bit more pressure on this government and the school boards to recognize that the 45,000 workers are serious. They are not taking the scraps that this government is offering. And so if that's the pressure that we need to provide, that's the pressure that we will need to provide. And it's been clear that these workers are done. These workers are done being disrespected. And quite frankly, as a leader, we need to ensure that we're respecting the voice that the workers clearly put out on Monday.
Yeah, we've been listening to QP President Lauren Walton speaking on the state of negotiations. Quote, she said, "We want to negotiate, but we are not going to bargain with ourselves." Again, this is ahead of a, quote, no board report that could happen later today, contingent upon negotiations.
Let's take you live to Queen's Park, where Ontario's Education Minister Stephen Lecce is speaking. We'll take a live listen in.
Overall, we're gonna watch what happened between September 23rd, and then we'll talk about it right now. So let's stay tuned, guys. So let's watch.
Economic uncertainty that the Minister of Finance just spoke about. We owe it to our parents to step up our support. And today, as was confirmed, we are stepping up those supports, committing to a total of $365 million in direct financial relief for parents across this province. That has been increased from the original $225 million announced in August. This $365 million direct support to parents will be opened in October for parents to apply. Now, we know that these investments and the momentum to keep children in positive and stable classrooms may be at risk, with QP today forging ahead with a strike vote that will set Ontario students back even further. I believe it is simply unacceptable when reflecting on the difficulty these kids have faced over the past 2 years. QP continues to demand a nearly 50% increase in compensation, or else they've all but confirmed they will strike. And I want families to know that for Prab and Peter, our premier, and our entire team, we will stand up for you, for your children, and for the staff who want to be in the classroom. We'll continue to negotiate and protect the full student experience right to June that students deserve. And by doing so, we ensure your kids stay in school without disruption, benefiting from the new tutoring supports, and that parents benefit too from additional financial support. Thank you. I'll turn it back to the President.
What either of you on the financial side say that you've just proven Justin Trudeau's claim that budgets balance themselves is actually correct? Because I hear a lot of spending that you guys have talked about, but your budget's still balanced. So how did that happen?
Well, thank you for that question, Brian, and I'll pass it over to my colleague Peter to speak to that as well. But you know, our government has always been focused on making sure that we make the critical investments into healthcare, into infrastructure across this province. That's why you see the largest base funding increases year over year in sectors like healthcare. But as Minister Bethlenfalvy said, there is uncertainty not just in this province, but you look across every province in Canada, and whether it be the fiscal projections or documents that were tabled, we worked with what we could to make sure that we put forward documents that everybody could look forward to and plan to. But I'm going to pass it over to Minister Bethlenfalvy to further elaborate on that.
Thank you. And thank you, Brian, for the question. No, budgets don't balance themselves. I want to be crystal clear about that. What we've done as a government is invested in critical infrastructure, building hospitals, long-term care, building highways and public transit. That's ongoing work, and it's continued to be invested in, because while investing in our critical infrastructure, we can grow our economy. We can get better jobs, hire more skilled trade workers, hire more nurses, more PSWs. So we believe that a strong, robust economy and a healthy infrastructure for healthcare and education and critical infrastructure is how you can have a fiscally responsible plan. And as a fiscally responsible finance minister, I think it's paramount that we not drop our eye on the fiscal situation, because as Prab just mentioned, these are challenging times. There are uncertainties out there, and we have to rely on good fiscal planning, a fiscal plan, the plan to build Ontario, as we took to the people of Ontario, and had confidence not only in that plan, but in the people and workers and the businesses of Ontario.
You've got a surplus right now, but part of that's driven by increased tax revenue due to inflation. You've got higher than expected GDP growth. You're also potentially looking at projections of a recession across the country next year. So are you worried about a deficit next year? When you talk about uncertainty, what are you looking at in terms of what these macroeconomic trends will mean for the budget and surplus or deficit?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on what may come, but I will say this. On August 9th, we updated the first quarter for results and highlighted that we're projecting an $18.8 billion deficit for this fiscal year. I'll be updating you no later than...
Education workers in Ontario will begin voting today on whether to strike, and their union is recommending that they vote yes.
The Canadian Union of Public Employees, or CUPE, has called the initial contract offer from the Ford government insulting.
Let's take you live.
Here being...
Education workers in Ontario will begin voting today on whether to strike, and their union is recommending that they vote yes.
The Canadian Union of Public Employees, or CUPE, has called the initial contract offer from the Ford government insulting. The province's 5 major education unions are all in the midst of bargaining new contracts with the government. CUPE's 55,000 education worker members, which includes librarians, custodians, and administrative staff, have until October the 2nd to vote. And CUPE President Laura Walton is discussing the strike vote by education workers that opened today. Let's listen in live now.
That's not a livable wage in 2022. So more than half of us work multiple jobs to make ends meet. Education workers having to hold down a second or even third job to get by is one reason why we're holding this vote for 10 days and doing it electronically. It's to make sure that every single worker can participate. I want to summarize what education workers are asking for. A raise of $3.25 per hour for each year of the collective agreement, enough to make it a bit more likely that education workers can support themselves with just one job instead of 2 or 3. A restoration of much needed services for students after years of cut, including enough educational assistance and early childhood educators so that every student gets the type of learning environment that they need. And protection against future service cuts by guaranteeing minimum staffing levels at each and every school board. Our proposals are reasonable, they are necessary, and they are affordable. If accepted, our proposals would secure a much needed investment in our schools from this government. Education worker proposals for student success and good jobs come directly from workers, the very people that make your schools run. Now, frontline education workers get to show the government that we stand behind these proposals and will continue to stand behind them. I know all is not well in Ontario's schools. I'm a mom. I've seen the effects of the Ford government's cuts to funding, education funding, with my own 2 eyes. Contrary to what the government would have you believe, we can do better as a province, and the resources do exist to meet the needs of children, families, and workers. What has been lacking, what is required, is the political will to invest. So when the government wants to keep cutting and pointing figures everywhere except in the mirror to lay blame, you can count on education workers to stand up for what's right. Education workers want to be in school doing the work that we love, but we can't do our work well when we're doing the jobs of 2 or 3 people because of cuts and understaffing. When we're forced to work evening and weekends right after working our day shift. When we're compelled to do class prep work on our own time, unpaid. When we're laid off every summer, unsure if we'll have work again come next September. When we return to the bargaining table on October 6th, and make no mistake, we will return, education workers will continue to bargain for you and for each other, for the public good. We will keep fighting for better pay for workers after a decade of wage cuts, and while inflation is skyrocketing, for the protection of minimum staffing levels to ensure students' needs are met, and for an investment in additional staffing to improve the quality of education. There's too much at stake, so we can't accept the Ford's government's answer of no any longer. Education workers have a good proposal package to settle on the table that's reasonable, necessary, and affordable. Stephen Lecce and Doug Ford have the power and resources to accept our proposal. They could and should do that today. And I will open for questions. And Richard, I do see your hand this morning. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Laura. Richard, Southern City News. With neither side's presenting new offers and you're holding a strike vote, it seems to me like a strike is almost inevitable. Am I wrong about that, Laura?
Well, you know what, Richard, it's funny, before we started this morning, I said, I expect Richard's going to ask me something about this. So interestingly enough, Richard, we actually provided some counter proposals with the proviso that we were willing to withdraw items should they meet us halfway. They refused to meet us halfway. So now we're back to where we were in the beginning. And, you know, that's part of negotiations. Part of negotiations is trying to find where that middle ground is. We took off a significant amount. I believe it was over $140 million, according to the costing of the government, of what we were willing to withdraw if they would agree to meet us halfway, and they refused.
All right, we've been listening in to CUPE President Laura Walton talking about the strike vote by education workers that is open today. The vote will be held electronically for 10 days so that everyone gets a chance to chime in. And they are proposing a raise of $3.25 an hour, restoration of education services, enough assistance for teachers and students, also guaranteed minimum staffing levels at every level of the school board. And they say that they're going to stand by these proposals despite the cuts by the Ford government and what they're counter proposing.
Oh, but you know what?
All right, now we're going to go to the next one in August.
Is that
Well, CUPE education workers are holding a news conference after a weekend conference. Let's listen in now.
Education workers holding strike votes is a direct result of the Ford's government refusing to use the 90 days this summer since we served notice to bargain to get a fair deal done. Education workers holding strike votes is part of the process to show this government we are united and ready to fight for what our students and communities need. Education workers holding strike votes is about sending a message to the Ford government that they are responsible for creating the problem and it's on them to fix it. 10 years of government's attack on education worker wages and government interference in our collective bargaining rights has resulted in wage settlements from 2012 to 2021 that equaled only 8.8% compounded. While inflation to the end of 2021 has totaled 19.5%. This includes us doing our time under Bill 124. So we've already taken a 10.7 wage cut, and we will not take another wage cut again. I want to finish by sharing some of the findings from a survey that CUPE OSBCU education workers completed in September and October of 2021. 71 to 75% of education workers are women. 60% of education workers are laid off every summer, with the majority needing an unemployment insurance in order to survive. But even in the best case, EI will only replace 55% of eligible earnings. Women are overrepresented in 10-month positions, getting laid off each June. 81.7% of women who responded to the survey are in 10-month positions, while only 20.1% of men said the same. But this is only part of the problem. In general, the work of women is undervalued. There is a profound and persistent gender wage gap in Ontario, and successive governments have exacerbated this province-wide gender wage gap by attacking the wages of public sector workers, a sector that is predominantly staffed by women. 51% of education workers said they have to work at least one additional job to make ends meet. This jumps to 64.5% for education workers who are sole income earners. 91% have faced at least one form of financial hardship because of their low wages. 41% have been late making a bill payment because their wages are insufficient to meet their needs. 24% have confirmed struggling to pay for gas or public transit, and that was before we had the gas prices spike. 27% of respondents reported to having to cut back on food, and that is before the explosion of inflation in 2022, and is an issue that Jamie West brought up last week at Queen's Park. Over 20% faced housing insecurity and worried about where they're going to live. When reading through the comments, there were many education workers saying they're still living with their parents because they couldn't afford their own place, or they're living with friends and roommates because they cannot afford to live independently. I want to leave you with a comment that was written by an educational work assistant, an education worker who makes less than $39,000 a year. When folks ask how poverty leads to terrible situations, remember that this isn't any different. I've had to make choices to survive that I wish I didn't have to. As a professional, well-educated person, I should not have to go without eating for a few days because I simply cannot afford to get groceries. And let's be real, it's not healthy foods, as those are costly and they don't last longer than a few days. Frontline education workers make an invaluable contribution to our communities. Without us, schools could not function and students wouldn't get the supports they need and deserve. The proposals for student success and good jobs that we have put forward are reasonable, they are necessary, and they are affordable. I'll now open for questions, and I do see I have some hands up, so I'm going to go to Richard. Richard Southern, go ahead.
Hi, Laura. Richard Southern, City News. Did CUPE provide a response to that government's offer, a counter offer? And if so, what was it?
No, It was very, very short and sweet. And we said, no, this is not acceptable.
Okay, so you didn't provide another offer. I know there's going to be parents out there. They're going to say, we've had so many school interruptions over the past 2 years, and the government's offering 8%. You know, not many people in the private sector are getting more than that. Why dangle this possibility of a strike now after all we've been through over 2 years?
Yeah, so let's be fair. There is actually private sector wages that are far exceeding 8% increases. As a matter of fact, we have provided several, the Carpenters Union, LiUNA, even in the grocery sector, these wages have gone up more than 8%. But let's be clear, it's not 8%. It's 2% for only those who make under $40,000. It's 1.25 if you make over $40,000. And so really, it's a two-tiered system of which we do not bargain two-tiered systems. And it is a pay cut in the face of inflation that is at 8%.
And Laura, when is this vote?
The vote will be taking place the end of September. So there is lots of time for this government to get to the bargaining table with real offers and real discussions. They've had 90 days to do so. We really encourage them to think beyond the 3 days that they've offered us in September.
So the earliest to strike.
We've been listening to a virtual news conference from QP education workers talking about a strike vote that they'll be looking towards and hoping to make some better improvements in terms of their collective bargaining agreement with the provincial government. We'll have more on this throughout the morning and afternoon.
CUPE will announce the results of a strike vote by 55,000.
Yep.
And if you're just a
You
simple
guys
line
are.
clerk working for slightly
And
more
you're
than
sure
minimum
this
wage,
is how
you know,
where we sit right now.
you get berated
Currently,
so easily.
as of September 20, or as of October 10th, 2022. The government filed no board report. We will be, the union QP filed no board report. We will be filing a question to the board on the 17th of October in terms of what the planning is, in terms of what will happen within the next couple, if we were to get a 5-day notice, or if the 5-day notice were to come out, because they are in talks right now. They are going to be going back to the table on October 17th and October 18th. We'll know by that point if they are going to strike or not. So we at least, it was a good thing, at least, that we know. Another thing that happened, so now we're going to get into what happened over the last week, or what happened yesterday. Yesterday, I went to London, Ontario. We left there around 9:30 in the morning. Traveled down to visit my my dad's side of the family.
Dylan's recording his
and then my mom's side of the family a little bit later. I spent the day, we went around in the park. And then my mom, and I went to wherever my mom's side of the family house, and that's where first time I went there alone, and then I came back home later in the evening. Yeah. So although the labor front is still going, even though it's a holiday, this is really the only time I was able to at least be available to do it for this week. Alright, so overall we call it a night here and see you guys, hopefully, fingers crossed, on the 17th of October.
Okay?
Alright. Have a great week, guys. And I will see you guys on Friday. Alright. Bye, everybody.